Cabin 7, the lake resort tragedy no one could solve. On the morning of June 14, 1998, the mist still clung to the surface of Lake Ellsworth, a narrow body of water tucked into the rolling hills of northern Idaho. At the Lakeview Resort, a cluster of 12 pine-clad cabins perched on a rocky shore, the only sound was the gentle lap of waves against the dock. It was a quiet, remote location that attracted hikers, anglers, and weekend seekers looking for solitude. Rebecca Langford, 32, a marketing executive from Seattle, had booked Cabin 7 for a 3-day retreat. She arrived on the afternoon of June 12, 1998, driving a silver Honda Civic that she parked in the resort's gravel lot. The registration list shows that only 3 other guests were on the property that weekend: a couple staying in Cabin 2 and a solo fisherman in Cabin 4. The resort staff consisted of caretaker Harold Fitch, 58, a retired fisherman who lived on site, and handyman Mike Soda, 45, who maintained the cabins and the surrounding grounds. The discovery came at 7:15 a.m. on June 14, when Fitch made his routine morning walk to check the cabins. He found Cabin 7 front door unlocked, the windows closed, and the interior in apparent order, except for the woman lying on the floor beside the bed. Rebecca Langford was on her back, a small amount of blood pooling near her head. There were no signs of a struggle. The bed was neatly made, the television was off, and a half-empty bottle of 1994 Columbia Valley Merlot sat on the small dining table, alongside 2 wine glasses, one of which bore a faint smear of lipstick. Sheriff Raymond Delgado of the Shoshone County Sheriff's Office arrived at the scene within the hour, accompanied by Detective Karen Ainsley from the Idaho State Police. The sheriff's initial report described the scene as surprisingly tidy for a violent death. The victim's purse was found on a chair, its contents intact, a wallet containing $180 cash, credit cards, and a small digital camera. Her car keys were in the ignition of her Honda Civic, which remained locked in the parking lot. Dr. Samuel Orton, the state medical examiner, performed an autopsy later that day. He determined that Rebecca Langford died of blunt force trauma to the head, caused by a heavy, blunt object that was never recovered. The wound was consistent with a single strike, and no defensive wounds were found on her hands or arms. The forensic pathologist noted that the lack of defensive injuries suggested the attack was either unexpected or that the victim was incapacitated quickly. The forensic team collected a number of trace items. Apart from the wine bottle and glasses, they recovered a partially smoked cigarette in an ashtray. The cigarette was a Marlboro Red, a brand that Rebecca Langford did not smoke. She was a non-smoker according to her personal effects. Fingerprint analysis of the wine glasses revealed only the victim's prints, while the cigarette butt yielded a partial print that did not match anyone in the resort's employee database at the time. A digital camera was processed, and its memory card contained photographs of the lake, the cabin's interior, and a single image of a man whose face was obscured by the camera's flash. The photograph, though blurry, showed a figure in a dark jacket standing near the dock. Detectives interviewed the handful of people who were on the property that weekend. Thomas Weller, the fisherman in Cabin 4, told officers he had been casting lines from the dock around 9:00 p.m. on June 13. He recalled seeing a man, approximately 35 years old, with dark hair and wearing a navy jacket, walking toward the cabins from the direction of the parking lot. He described the man as moving quickly, like he was headed somewhere specific. Weller said he thought the stranger might be a guest or a friend of a guest and paid little attention. Linda Marlowe, a guest in Cabin 2, told investigators that she heard a car idling near Cabin 7 at around midnight. She described the engine as a low, steady hum that lasted for several minutes before it stopped. She also noted that the lights in Cabin 7 were off, and she assumed the vehicle belonged to someone who had arrived late. The Marlowes left the resort the next morning and did not see anyone else. Mike Soda, the handyman, said he had been working on the porch of Cabin 5 on the afternoon of June 13, replacing a few loose boards. He remembered seeing Rebecca earlier that day, walking toward the lake with a camera. Soda claimed he went to his own cabin at around 10:00 p.m. and did not hear or see anything unusual. His background check revealed no prior criminal record, and he passed a polygraph exam administered by the sheriff's department. The investigation expanded to include a review of the resort's maintenance logs. Records showed that the lock on cabin 7 had been replaced 1 week prior to the murder after a guest reported a faulty latch. The new lock was a standard pin-tumble model, and the only key was held by the resort's office. No duplicate keys had been made, and the office log indicated that the key had been given to Rebecca upon her arrival. In the weeks that followed, detectives canvassed the nearby towns of Mullen and Wallace, looking for a gray 1995 Subaru Legacy that a witness said had been seen leaving the resort around 1:00 a.m. on June 14. The car was never located, and the license plate number was never recorded. Phone records from the resort's landline showed no outgoing calls after 9:30 p.m. on the night of the murder, and Rebecca's cell phone, a Nokia 5110, had no incoming or outgoing calls after she arrived at the resort. Despite the volume of circumstantial evidence, the case stalled. In early 1999, the Shoshone County Sheriff's Office officially suspended the investigation, classifying it as unsolved. The murder weapon was never found, and the identity of the man seen walking toward cabin 7 remained unknown. In 2019, a true crime documentary series revisited the Lakeview Resort case, bringing new attention to the unsolved killing. The production team obtained a previously sealed forensic report that revealed a fingerprint from the wine glass had been submitted to the FBI's automated fingerprint identification system in 2000, but had never produced a match. The print belonged to a man who, according to state records, died in a single-vehicle accident in 2005. That man, James Harwell, had worked briefly as a maintenance worker at the resort in the summer of 1997, but he left after a dispute with the owner. How his fingerprint ended up on a glass in cabin 7 in 1998 remains unexplained. The documentary also uncovered a second, similar death that had occurred in the same cabin 20 years earlier. In September 1978, a 28-year-old woman named Elena Frost was found dead in cabin 7 under almost identical circumstances. A half-empty bottle of wine, a cigarette butt, and blunt force trauma. The 1978 case had been closed as a probable accident, but the forensic methods of the time were limited, and no further details were ever recorded. The resort had closed for renovations after that incident and reopened in 1990. The parallels between the two deaths have led some investigators to wonder whether a single individual could be responsible for both murders, possibly someone who knew the cabin's history and its isolated nature. Others argue that the similarities may be coincidental, the product of a pattern that emerges when a remote location is used as a stage for violence. Today, cabin 7 remains empty. The Lakeview Resort still operates, but the door to the cabin is kept locked, and the property's ledger no longer lists it as available for guests. The murder of Rebecca Langford has never been solved, and the identity of the person who left the fingerprint on the wine glass, the blurred figure in the photograph, and the man seen walking toward the cabin on a June evening remain unanswered questions. What is known is that someone entered cabin 7, shared a drink with Rebecca Langford, and struck her with enough force to kill her. Why that person chose cabin 7, and whether they will ever be identified, is a mystery that continues to haunt the quiet shores of Lake Ellsworth.